Right, I'm a bit late to the party on this one, but I finally got round to shooting with some of Ilford's Ortho 80 in 120 format. I've shot Ortho probably about 30 years ago and never shot it since. So anyway, without further ado, this video is going to have me going off into Snowdonia and shooting a few favourite locations. And to make it more interesting, I am running the Ortho 80 alongside Ilford's Delta 100. Similar speed film, and to make it simpler for me, I decided to rate the Delta 100 at 80, so both films are shot at the same speed. And to make it even easier still, I actually then developed them in the same tank for the same time. Now they're roughly equivalent, very roughly equivalent in terms of time. Xtol was the developer at 1:1. Lovely clean negatives, perfectly exposed on both. So anyway, let's start watching the video and I will go through each of the images, the pairs of images, and compare them side by side when we get to them. Well, today I thought I would try something a bit different. I typically like to stick to what I know and what works, but you'll never find out if anything's actually better using that approach. So finally got myself around to shooting with a bit of Ilford's Ortho today. First time I've tried it, so let's see what happens. Now I'm a great believer in comparing things together into similar conditions to get a real feel for how they work, whether that be cameras, lenses, films, digital sensors, etc. So rather than just shoot Ilford's Ortho on its own today in this beautiful landscape setting, I'm going to shoot it alongside Ilford's Delta 100, which is sort of largely comparable in terms of speed and flexibility. I've got the Bronica with me with two backs, so I can shoot them side by side using all the same settings. I'm going to shoot the first shot on each of the different film backs without a filter, and then I'm probably going to shoot the second one with a yellow filter. Now Ilford Ortho doesn't register colours really above yellow, so that is probably the strongest filter you can use. Delta 100 obviously you could use red filters, etc. So prove an interesting comparison, I think. Now, it's worth stipulating here that none of these images have been manipulated in any way whatsoever. They are straight out of camera, or should I say straight out of scanner. They haven't been adjusted whatsoever, so they should be as close to representative of the scene as possible, and also, again, giving you ability to compare the two films side by side without me messing about with the contrast and clarity, etc. So, the images here on the left is an unfiltered image, and on the right is a yellow filtered image. Now you can see there is more definition and more separation in the image with the yellow filter than the one over here. It's a bit flat. You could definitely boost this up, however, on this side, but yeah, the one with the yellow filter is definitely nicer. Now then, taking the same pair of images, but this time with the Ortho 80 film, we notice a bit more contrast in there. Now the yellow filter again has done quite a good job because the film is sensitive into the yellow end of the spectrum, and there is a bit more separation there, but it's noticeable that they both have more contrast than the Delta 100. If I just pop up the Delta 100 with the yellow filter and put it alongside the Ortho 80 with the yellow filter, you should see that clearly. So here we are, both films with the yellow filter, Ortho 80 on the right, Delta 100 on the left. And to my mind, I like the look of the Ortho film. It's got more contrast, but you could boost up the contrast with Lightroom or in the darkroom without too much difficulty. So that's the first image. Now, I'm not really one for sort of testing films formally, shooting targets and the like. You know, I may do in the future, but I'd much rather come out with the films, use them in the cameras in the way that I would expect to use them. Sort of landscapes I shoot and the conditions I shoot in. I can get a better feel for it that way rather than a sort of test chart, looking at resolution and grain and other things that aren't that relevant at times. So the idea, I think, for me with Ilford's Ortho 80 is, can I find a film which renders my sort of landscapes in a different way, in some way that I don't currently capture? Now what I mean by that is will it render the sort of scenes I shoot in a complementary way? And I'm thinking really largely of like the woodlands and the greens, not so much the big views, which is why I've started off shooting big views, but I have got a bit of cloud in there because the ortho film is known for its yes, rather blank skies at times because it is very blue sensitive, or should I say it's not red sensitive. So I'm not really sure whether it'll join the list of films I shoot with regularly, but till I try it, I just won't know. Now, I have shot this one numerous times before, unashamedly shooting it again because it is a beautiful scene. Clouds perfect, just waiting for it to move into the right position. Shooting with the standard lens again, f/16, plenty of depth of field, about what we saw, about an 1/8 and a 15th. The sky is quite bright though, so I may struggle with the sky a little bit, but I do need shadow detail under the tree, otherwise it's going to go to mush. Now, looking at this second image here of the tree and Lindwachen in the foreground, on the left no filter, on the right yellow filter. Now, I'm not going to do this for each of these shots that follow because it'll just take too long. Suffice to say that with the traditional film Delta 100, the image with the yellow filter looks better. There is more separation between the various tones, a bit more detail in the sky. It's the nicer of the two. So from this point on, I will probably just compare the images shot with the yellow filter for both the Delta 100 and the Ortho 80. So okay, we've got Delta 100 on the left again, and we've got the Ortho 80 on the right. Now here again, there is more contrast in the Ortho 80 shot. Not much in it this time though compared to the first one. It is a bit closer, and also you could adjust the image on the left here to look much closer. Let's have a little dive in and have a look at some of the grain, shall we, on the screen. Well, I don't know what you can see, but to my eye, they are very, very similar. And in terms of sharpness down here, again, it's really too difficult to call if either is sharper. Let's go into the distant tree trunk and look at shadow detail. Possibly more on the Delta, but that could just be a slight anomaly with the actual capture stage when I scanned it with my Panasonic G9. You could easily lighten up the shadows here to match this one, so I'd call that one fairly equal. Well, and usually for me, I've taken another shot of the same scene but from a different angle with a different lens. Just couldn't resist it really. It's so tranquil down here. I mean, I was suffering from a case of the CBAs this morning, and thankfully I've snapped out of it now. But yeah, I've got the 50mm on f/16. Once again, two shots, one without a filter, one with the yellow filter, adding one stop for the yellow filter. So that's an 1/8 of a second and a 1/4 of a second for both the Delta 100 and the 80 Ortho. I tried a polarizer, it just took too much of the light out of the scene, and it did also push the shadows down within the tree and also around the stone wall, and that would have killed all my shadow detail. I just don't need that. Now again, shot again with the yellow filter obviously, I won't say it again, Delta 100 on the left, Ortho 80 on the right. Sharpness, yeah, it's comparable. It's almost like you're looking at the same films in terms of grain structure. Into the sky, the light areas which mercilessly show up grain, it's pretty equal again. I do like the sort of slight additional contrast from the Ortho 80 over here, but you could do that with the Delta 100. There's nothing particularly magical or special about it. It's a very nice looking film and it is very sharp, but so is the Delta 100. So again, I'd call that one pretty much a draw. Although I'm ostensibly sort of looking at Ilford Ortho 80 today, I am out on a photo shoot. I don't do recce's just to test film. This is brilliant lighting. It's a beautiful location. I'm not in work, so I ain't going to waste the time playing about with film just for the sake of it. Now, I have set this shot up with my wide-angle lens again, with both films, and exposed it generously for the shadows. However, I've taken 4 frames with each film two with and two without the filter. So I really want to give myself as many options as possible when it comes to the final negative, because I hope it is a good shot. I am tempted actually to shoot it again and wait for the light to change, because I could tromp around for a couple of hours and not get something this good. Okay, so this is one of the more interesting shots of the day for me, photographically speaking, and it's quite interesting here that they look quite similar in terms of their contrast levels on the screen, but I am noticing a little bit more, and it's difficult to show here in any great clarity. There's a little bit more pattern in the sky on this one over here with the Ortho 80 than there is with the Delta. Not much in it, very similar. Shadow detail is almost identical. And again, looking at the sharpness, let's pick up on these very fine little twigs here, these hanging off the branch. That again is the same. So very, very similar. A very nice performance from both films, to be honest. Again, I wouldn't mind having either of them. You'll just have to forgive me. I'm having one of those moments where I sit in the landscape and enjoy it for what it is without fretting over taking a shot. It's absolutely fantastic today. Perfect. Another old favourite, Llynguinant. Absolutely dazzlingly bright sun, but we've got cloud up there. Plenty of greens. There is a digger putting in a septic tank in the far foreground. That's not ideal, so I'll try and use some of this, I'll spin you around. I'll try and use some of this gorse in the foreground here to mask that out. Easy to fix obviously in Lightroom, not so easy in a darkroom. Okay, I'm not going to labour the point here. Standard 80mm lens, going to shoot about f11, maybe f16. One without, one with yellow filter, both films again. The one on the right is a little bit more punchy again with the Ortho film. Nice separation going on in these trees and the sky here. It's a bit flatter with the Delta 100 in its open scene. I'm surprised how well the Ortho 80 has handled the scene. It's again, you could definitely manipulate the Delta 100 to match the Ortho 80, but it's very nice to see it straight out of scanner, if you like, looking so punchy, so contrasty. A little bit more, depth in the shadows there. Let's zoom in right onto this lovely little cottage where we can see tons of detail. Can we go in a bit closer at 200%? Again, I think you are limited by the resolution of the film, my scanner, the lens. A bit more detail in the roof though on the Ortho 80, I'll be honest. You'd be hard pushed to bring out that level of contrast in the Delta 100. And again, nice dark tones there. So overall, I prefer the look of the Ortho 80 image in that particular example. Okay, another impromptu stop. I'm trying to work out how to get some woodland into my shots today. And I did think of a location, one I've not been to for a couple of years now, at least. I'm just going to get run over, hang on a sec. False alarm, going the other way. Yes, it's a beautiful bridge with overhanging trees, no sky, plenty of shadow detail, so even on a bright sunny day like this I can rattle off a few frames with both the Delta 100 and the Ortho 80 just to see how they work. Fantastic. Now in this particular one, it's interesting now because we have a preponderance of green tones in this particular shot, which is why I went to this particular location. And you can see straight away on the Ortho 80 shot, again with the yellow filter, it's a lot flatter. There's a lot less contrast in there. Maybe that's because, I don't know, all the tones were green and I'm not getting quite the same separation as I am with the Panchromatic film of Delta 100. There is a lot more contrast in this Delta 100 shot. Just let me load that up there. There's also a bit of movement in the Ortho 80 shot, must have been a bit windy. But I actually prefer the look of the Delta 100 in that one. It would be easier to expand the tones and bring out a bit more contrast. A little bit flat with the Ortho 80 there. So I'd hand that one to Delta 100. But again, in terms of sharpness and grain. I mean, apart from the fact there's a bit of wind blowing, there's nothing in it. Well, another one of my fave locations. Best way to test something out is to shoot it, as I said, where you would normally. I shoot here on a semi-regular basis, about an hour from home. Beautiful little spot. Summer, autumn, winter, never fails. Right, let me just go through the setup. Got my 150mm lens. I think I'll set it to, about f8, no depth of field problems, everything's in the distance. And I'm shooting some reflections of trees which are sort of on the turn colour-wise, so yellows and greens in there, also the water. Start off with the ortho. I think I will shoot it without a yellow filter and with a yellow filter, just to see what it does to those leaves, and then do it with the delta. Again on this one, I'd say it's a little bit punchier on the Ortho 80 than the Delta 100. Probably slightly better separation there. There was different tones, obviously you can see in the colour shots on the image, the B-roll. A little bit more colour going on in the background, and the Ortho film has separated it out very nicely. So really, which one would I choose? Probably the Ortho, but again, there's so little to choose between them in reality that you could manipulate Delta or Ortho to look like the other one quite easily. So yeah, that's it. Back to the lab now, and let's have a quick look at what I got, because I don't know yet, and let's talk about the film and the results. Well, there we go. I am not sure what to make of that really, other than the fact that I didn't see significant differences between the two films, certainly not significant enough to make me choose one over the other for the type of scenes I was shooting there. And they were fairly typical sort of scenes that I would shoot at this time of year. So really, would I choose Ortho 80 over Delta 100? Possibly not, on the evidence of what I've seen here, but it is only a cursory examination of the benefits and the pros and cons of an ortho film. Maybe if I was to use it more extensively in my local forest, try it on different subject matter, but as it stands at the moment, with its fairly slow speed and obviously its limited sensitivity and ability to use the likes of orange and red filters, I'm not sure I'd choose it at the moment personally, but I can see that it's a very nice film. It's very fine grained. It has a lot of contrast and punch in there, particularly with the yellow filter. So yeah, very, very nice film indeed. Quite expensive though, compared to Delta 100. So I'd probably stick with something like Delta 100 or one of the slightly faster films, albeit they are slightly grainier. So I hope you found this quick comparison side by side useful, informative. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again on the next trip. So thanks for watching.